I am a customer, and I need to speak to the manager. Today.
Sir, we're very busy. If this is about small change or opening a basic account, any teller can help you.
This isn't about small change. It's about something much bigger than you think.
Whatever you're asking for, this really isn't the time.
I'm not asking for anything. I'm showing you something.
Inside this old sack are the papers that decide what happens to this bank and to your job.
My job? Check the name on the ownership papers, then check the date.
William Harris, majority shareholder, has Metro First Bank Group.
Before you judge the next person you see, listen to this. An old black man walks into a shiny, high-end bank, dragging a dirty, torn sack across the floor. People laugh. Phones come out. Staff roll their eyes and try to brush him aside. But within just 10 minutes, that same nobody calmly proves he owns the entire bank they're standing in, and every single person who mocked him is suddenly terrified. This isn't just a story about money, it's a story about how wrong we can be about people. Watch what happens next. Everyone in that busy bank lobby exploded with laughter when the old black man walked in, dragging a torn, dirty sack across the shiny marble floor. It was a Friday afternoon. Phones were out, lines were long, people were impatient. Everyone was in a hurry, until he walked in. The door swung open, and there he was. Bent shoulders. Faded shirt. Frayed pants. Shoes that looked like they'd survived a war. And then, that sack. Brown, ripped at the edges, stained like it had been through rain, mud, and years of hard living. He didn't carry it on his back, he dragged it behind him. The rough fabric scraped loudly across the clean, polished floor, leaving a long, ugly smear. Heads turned instantly. The typing stopped. The quiet bank music suddenly felt too loud. Some whispered. Some pointed. And one young man near the door lifted his phone, opened his camera, and started recording. He tilted the phone to his friend and snickered, "Bro, look at this. This is going viral." A woman in a sharp business suit wrinkled her nose. "What is he doing in here with that bag?" she muttered under her breath. Another guy in a designer jacket laughed, "Man, he's in the wrong place. This is a bank, not a shelter." A mother gently pulled her child to the side, not out of kindness, but out of embarrassment. "Don't stare," she whispered, even as she stared. The security guard at the corner watched carefully, his hand resting just a little tighter on his belt. He'd seen people like this before, or so he thought. People who came in asking for coins, for help, for anything. They thought he was lost. They thought he was poor. They thought he didn't belong there. Every glance said it. Every smirk confirmed it. To them, he was invisible and yet somehow a problem at the same time. Just an old man with a dirty sack. Just another story to joke about later. He walked slowly, each step echoing through the lobby. Not shaking. Not confused. Just calm. His eyes scanned the room, not with fear, but with quiet awareness, like he had seen this scene 1,000 times before. The looks. The judgment. The silent labels. He didn't rush. He didn't apologize. He didn't look around for approval. He just kept walking, the sack dragging behind him, leaving that harsh scratching sound on the marble. It annoyed people. Not because of the noise, but because it clashed with their perfect image of a respectable bank. The tellers exchanged quick looks. One leaned over and whispered, "Do you know him?" Another shook her head. "No idea, but someone needs to help him out of here before there's a scene." A man in line laughed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Must be here to ask for spare change." "Wrong place, old man." A few people snorted behind their hands. Nobody stopped to ask his name. Nobody asked why he was there. Nobody even considered that the sack might hold something other than trash, clothes, or old bottles. Because people are fast to decide who you are. When all they see is what you're wearing. Now pause for a second and imagine this. You're standing in that lobby. You see this man walk in. Be honest, what would you think? Most people in that room thought the same thing. He doesn't matter. But what they never imagined was that in less than 10 minutes, that same old man with a sack would calmly prove he actually owned the entire bank they were standing in. The floors? The walls? The offices with the glass doors and shining nameplates? The very system that held their money safe? They were all tied to him. If you keep watching, you're going to see exactly how their laughter died, how their faces changed, and how every single person in that room learned a lesson they would never, ever forget. Because the moment their smiles vanished is the moment you'll start questioning how you judge people too. Stay with this story. What's inside that dirty old sack is not what you think. His name was Mr. Harris. 72 years old. Gray hair curled softly around his ears, a little wild but clean. A faded jacket that had once been dark blue now looked almost gray. Worn-out shoes with cracked leather and thin soles that had clearly walked a long, hard life. And then there was that old sack he carried like it weighed the world. The strap cut into his shoulder, but he didn't complain. His fingers, lined and rough, gripped it tightly, as if whatever was inside was more valuable than anything in the entire building. To most people, he looked like someone who'd wandered off the street. Someone who'd taken a wrong turn. Someone who didn't belong anywhere near polished glass doors and air-conditioned lobbies. But inside that sack was something that could change the way everyone looked at him forever. Not money. Not gold. Something far more powerful than that. He stepped carefully toward the reception desk, moving slowly but not weakly, just like a man who had learned long ago that rushing through life doesn't always get you where you need to go. The reception desk was tall, sleek, and spotless. Behind it sat a young woman with perfect hair, perfect nails, and a perfect practiced smile. The kind of smile you put on when your job demands it, even if your eyes say something completely different. As Mr. Harris approached, her smile flickered. Her gaze dropped to his shoes. Then to his jacket. Then to the sack. In that single scan, her expression went from polite to bothered. She straightened a stack of papers that didn't need straightening and forced the corners of her mouth up again. "Sir, this line is for customers," she said, her tone tight but trying to sound helpful. Her eyes darted to his clothes again, almost like she hoped she'd misunderstood what she was seeing. But she hadn't. He looked poor. He looked tired. He looked like what most people are trained to ignore. Mr. Harris didn't flinch. He didn't look offended. He simply met her eyes and replied softly, with a calm that cut through the noise of the lobby. "I am a customer. And I need to speak to the manager. Today." Something in the way he said, "today," made it sound less like a request, and more like an appointment that was already overdue. Behind him, the line shuffled impatiently. People weren't just in a hurry. They were annoyed that he was the one blocking their way to the counter. Someone near the back of the line muttered, just loud enough to be heard. "Why's he wasting everyone's time?" Another voice added, with a cruel little chuckle. "Probably wants a few dollars." "Wrong place, old man." A couple of people tried to hide their smirks. One man didn't even bother hiding it, he just stared, amusement all over his face, like this was free entertainment while he waited for his turn. The receptionist glanced nervously from Mr. Harris to the growing line behind him. You could almost see the calculation in her eyes. If she spent time on him, the others would complain. If she ignored him, people would approve. For her, he was a problem. For the crowd, he was an inconvenience. But for himself, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Mr. Harris didn't turn around to address the comments. He didn't tell anyone to be quiet. He didn't try to explain himself or pull out proof of anything. Not yet. He just stood there, the weight of the sack hanging from his shoulder, his posture relaxed but firm. His eyes stayed calm. Too calm for someone being laughed at. Too calm for someone being treated like they didn't belong. It was the kind of calm you only see in people who already know how the story ends. Because while everyone else saw an old man about to beg, Mr. Harris knew he was about to reveal something that would flip the entire room upside down. The receptionist cleared her throat. "Do you have an account with us, sir?" she asked, still sounding doubtful. He gave the faintest hint of a smile. "You could say that," he replied quietly. "But I'd rather explain it to your manager." Behind him, someone huffed in frustration. "This is ridiculous," they said under their breath. "We have real business here." Real business. As if his presence was fake. As if his time didn't matter. But Mr. Harris didn't break. Didn't snap. Didn't even sigh. He just waited. Patient. Steady. Because he wasn't just another person in line. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He was a man with a mission. A man with a past no one in that room knew about. A man holding, in that worn-out sack, the truth about who really had power in that bank. He knew something they didn't. And he was only a few minutes away from proving it. The manager finally appeared, a tall man in a perfect suit, name tag shining like a badge of authority. He walked out from the glass office at the back of the bank, straightening his tie as he moved. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, his hair carefully styled, his expression already impatient before he'd even reached the front desk. From across the lobby, he had already decided who Mr. Harris was. Not a businessman. Not an investor. Not anyone important. Just another old man making trouble at the counter. He didn't see the calm in Mr. Harris's eyes. He didn't see the quiet strength in the way he stood. He saw the faded jacket, the tired shoes, and that old sack hanging from his shoulder. "Sir, we're very busy," the manager said, forcing a polite tone but failing to hide the edge in his voice. "If this is about small change or opening a basic account, any teller can help you." The words "small change" dropped into the air like an insult. People around chuckled, not even trying to be subtle anymore. To them, this was funny. This was entertainment between transactions. One guy near the middle of the line leaned back and said loudly, "Just give him a few bucks and send him out." A few people laughed. Someone else snorted in agreement. The manager heard it. He could have turned and said, "That's not appropriate." He could have reminded them that every person who walks into a bank deserves respect. But he didn't. He let the comment hang there, unchallenged. By staying silent, he agreed. And in that moment, every disrespectful look, every quiet laugh, every cruel whisper was pointed straight at one person. The old black man with the sack. He stood there, at the center of it all, as if under a spotlight he never asked for. You could feel the judgment pressing in from all sides. The receptionist avoided his eyes. The manager stared at him like a problem. The customers watched with a kind of cold curiosity. What would this nobody do next? But notice this. Mr. Harris never raised his voice. He never begged. He never tried to defend himself with long explanations or desperate words. He didn't puff out his chest to look important. He didn't shout, "You'll be sorry." He didn't name drop or brag. He simply stayed calm. His breathing steady. His shoulders relaxed. His gaze clear. It was the kind of calm that comes from knowing you don't have to prove who you are, because the truth is already on your side. Then, without a word, Mr. Harris reached for the strap of his sack and lifted it gently off his shoulder. The rough fabric rustled as he set it on the counter. A few people in line leaned forward, squinting to see what was inside. Some expected old clothes. Some expected bottles. Some expected nothing but junk. But Mr. Harris knew exactly what was in there. He just slowly opened his sack. Carefully, like he was unveiling something that mattered. He reached in with both hands and pulled out a thick bundle of documents, wrapped carefully in clear plastic to protect them. They weren't crumpled. They weren't dirty. They were neat, heavy, and official. He set them down on the smooth counter. The soft thud they made was surprisingly loud in the quieting room. The manager frowned, the first trace of uncertainty flickering across his face. This didn't look like a donation request. This didn't look like someone asking for coins. "These are my papers," Mr. Harris said quietly, his voice low but firm. "This isn't about small change. This is about the bank itself. And your job." Those last two words, "your job," hit harder than anyone expected. The laughter stopped. The chuckles died mid-breath. Now the lobby got silent. The sound of fingers tapping on phone screens faded. Even the people who had been scrolling without paying attention suddenly looked up, eyes locked on the old man and his stack of documents. The young guy who had been recording on his phone lifted it a little higher, suddenly sensing that this was no longer a joke, this was something big. You could feel the energy in the room shift. Curiosity replaced mockery. Confusion replaced arrogance. For the first time since he walked in, people weren't laughing at Mr. Harris. They were watching him. Really watching. Something serious was happening. And every single person in that lobby was about to find out exactly who the old man with the sack really was. Mr. Harris laid the documents on the manager's desk. Not carelessly. Not like they were random papers. He placed them down with slow, deliberate precision, right in the center of the polished wooden surface, where no one could pretend not to see them. The clear plastic shimmered under the office lights, catching the attention of not just the manager, but a few nearby customers who were close enough to peek. "Check the name on the ownership papers," he said. "Then check the date." His voice was calm, almost gentle. But there was steel underneath it. The manager frowned, more annoyed than curious at first. He glanced at the documents the way you'd glance at a flyer someone forced into your hand. He sighed. "Sir, I really don't have time." "Just read the name," Mr. Harris repeated. He didn't raise his voice, but somehow, the words landed like a command. Reluctantly, the manager pulled the stack closer. He slid the top page out from under the plastic and tilted it toward himself. His eyes moved lazily across the heading. Then snapped back to the top line. And as he actually read the words on the document, the color slowly drained from his face. On the top page, in clear black letters, was the name. William Harris. He blinked. Once. Twice. His gaze dropped to the line just beneath it. Majority shareholder, Metro First Bank Group. He read it again, just to be sure. Same words. Same name. No mistake. The manager's throat tightened. He lifted his eyes slowly from the paper to the man standing in front of him, the same man he'd brushed off only moments before. The very bank they were standing in. The very building everyone thought he didn't belong in. And the name on the document belonged to the man with the faded jacket and the old sack. The silence in the lobby grew heavier. People didn't know exactly what the document said, but they could see the manager's expression changing, fast. He flipped through the pages now, no longer annoyed, but nervous. Each document confirmed the same shocking reality: this wasn't a prank. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Inside the stack were legal contracts formally recognizing William Harris as the primary investor. Investment statements showing years of financial contributions to Metro First Bank Group. Board member lists with his name highlighted among the top positions. And finally, a signed letter from the corporate head office, warmly welcoming Mr. William Harris as the largest investor in the regional branch. The manager's hands trembled slightly as he reached for that last letter. He scanned the bottom of the page, desperate to prove it was fake. But there it was. The signature. Written clearly, boldly, undeniably. The name of the CEO of Metro First Bank Group, the very person who had approved the manager's own hiring. It was real. The documents were real. The old man was not a random stranger. He was the majority shareholder. Now the room was holding its breath. The soft hum of conversations died completely. Even the background music seemed too loud for the moment. No one dared to laugh. No one dared to whisper. All eyes were on the manager, and on Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris stood there, not smug, not gloating, just steady. He had seen this reaction before. I don't understand, the manager managed to say, his voice suddenly smaller. Why didn't anyone tell us? Mr. Harris cut in, not harshly, but firmly. This bank was about to close down 15 years ago, he said, loud enough for more than just the manager to hear. I invested my life savings when no one else believed in it. He placed a hand gently on the papers. I kept this place alive. I pay your salary, and yet, you couldn't even speak to me with respect. The words hit hard, not just for the manager, but for everyone within earshot. You could almost feel the shame creeping through the room like a cold wind. The manager's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Sir, I didn't know, he stuttered, all the confidence from earlier gone. I know you didn't, Mr. Harris replied. You didn't ask. Out in the lobby, the young man who had been recording lowered his phone slowly, his excitement replaced by guilt. This wasn't content anymore. This was a lesson. He turned the screen off. He couldn't keep filming. The people who had been chuckling minutes before suddenly found the floor very interesting. Shoes were stared at. Carpet patterns became fascinating. Eye contact became something to avoid. Because everything they thought they knew. About who mattered and who didn't. About who was important and who was in the way. Was wrong. Completely, painfully wrong. Mr. Harris looked around the lobby, not with anger, but with disappointment. His eyes moved slowly from face to face, the suited businessman who had laughed the loudest, the woman who had pulled her child away, the young man still clutching his phone like it was burning his hand. He didn't glare. He didn't shame them with shouting. His silence alone was enough to make them feel smaller. All of you, he said gently, his voice steady but heavy, saw old clothes and a worn-out sack, and decided I was less than you. The words hung in the air like a mirror, forcing every person in that lobby to see themselves clearly for the first time that day. A few people shifted from one foot to the other. Someone coughed just to break the tension. But nothing could cut through what they were feeling now. Mr. Harris reached down and raised the sack, holding it up so everyone could see it clearly. Inside this bag, he continued, are the results of a lifetime of hard work. He paused, letting that sink in. I grew up with nothing, he said. No rich family. No safety net. No one handing me opportunities. I worked 3 jobs. I mopped floors at night, carried bricks during the day, and sold whatever I could on weekends, just to survive. A few heads lifted. No one had expected to hear this. I was turned away from banks that didn't want my business, he added. I was told I didn't fit their image. I was talked down to, looked over, laughed at, just like today. You could see the guilt rising in people's faces, like a slow, painful wave. But I kept going, he said. I saved every dollar. I studied money when I had none. I learned how business worked when the doors were closed to me. And when this place, he gestured around the lobby, was failing, when no one wanted to touch it, I took everything I had, and I bought it. He pointed at the polished floor. The same floor his sack had scraped across. I walk in here dressed like this, he said, his voice softer now, to remind myself where I came from. To never become proud. To never forget that I wasn't always the man whose name is on those ownership papers. He let that sit there for a moment. And I do it, he added, to see who treats me like a human being, no matter what I wear. No one said a word. The same people who had laughed at him minutes ago now wished they could disappear into the walls. A man in an expensive suit stared at his shoes. A woman in heels blinked back tears she hadn't expected to feel. The young man with the phone quietly slipped it into his pocket, unable to look up. The laughter from earlier felt ugly now, heavy and cruel. Mr. Harris turned back to the manager, who still stood frozen behind his desk. Your position is not the problem, he said. Your attitude is. You judged a book not just by its cover, but by its color and its age. The words were direct, but not shouted. That made them hit even harder. The manager swallowed hard, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, sir, he stammered. I truly didn't know. I never meant to. But you did, Mr. Harris replied quietly. And that is the point. You didn't mean to, because you didn't bother to see me at all. The manager, embarrassed and shaken, apologized right there in front of everyone. I apologize, Mr. Harris, he said, his voice trembling. For my behavior. For my assumptions. Please, let me make it right. You can have my office, a private meeting, coffee, anything you'd like. He sounded desperate, not just to save his job, but to save what little dignity he had left. But Mr. Harris just smiled, a tired, kind smile that held more wisdom than anger. The only thing I want, he said, turning so his voice carried across the lobby, is for you, and everyone here, to remember this day. He looked at the faces around him, one by one. Because the next person who walks through that door might not own the bank, but they still deserve respect. Silence. Not the empty kind. The heavy kind. The kind that comes when people know they've been wrong. Then, without another word, he picked up his sack, nodded to the stunned crowd, and walked slowly toward the private corridor at the side, the one leading to the executive offices. To his office. The office reserved for board members. The office that belonged to the man nobody had taken seriously when he walked in. And this time, no one laughed. No smirks. No whispers. No phones held up to record. They moved out of his way with quiet respect, some stepping back, others lowering their heads as he passed. Because now they knew. The real measure of a person is never on the surface. And they had just been schooled by the very man they almost threw away. If this story challenged the way you see people, don't just scroll away. Tap that like button so more people hear this powerful message. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder, you never know who you're talking to. And if you enjoy stories that open your eyes and shake your assumptions, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because there are more life-changing stories coming your way. Now tell me in the comments. Have you ever been judged by how you look, or have you ever judged someone before knowing their story? What happened, and what did you learn from it?